Yo, before we get this episode underway, I wanted to let you know that I'm going to be taking on 5 men or women who want to work closely with me over a 28-day period leading up to Christmas. So starting from around about next week, and what you're going to expect to achieve is you're going to drop anywhere between 6 to 8 pounds of body fat, build lean muscle and strength, and really build an unbreakable routine and structure with your training and nutrition. Now, this is a huge opportunity for you because basically my minimum sign up is normally 90 days. So this gives you the opportunity to get your foot in the door. And I wanted to give you first dibs on this, my friend, as a fellow listener of the podcast. I haven't actually announced this yet anywhere else. So all you got to do is just simply click the link below to apply, and I'll be in touch to see if I can help you. Anyway, enjoy the episode. Ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of Optimize Your Body podcast. I've got an awesome guest on the line today, and he goes by the name of Amir Ashrafy. Is that right? Did I get it right?
That's correct. Yes.
Awesome, awesome. But yeah, I found Amir through the obviously low carb doctors website here down under, low carb down under, and obviously I've done a collaboration with Dr. Anthony Chafee and a few of the Carnivore guys, as the audience knows. And Amir came to my attention through that space, but also you've worked and helped a few of my clients with your expertise, man, which I really appreciate. And before we get into it, I want to shout out Ben as well, because as you know, well, he joined my program over a year ago, and since then, with your help and my help, he's actually no longer on antidepressants, right? Which is a huge win, man. But I've got to thank you for that, because you give him a lot of guidance there with how to level up his mental health with his nutrition, his gut health, and all that kind of stuff. So well done on that, Amir, and thanks for that, man.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
Nah, it's an absolute pleasure. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind just telling the audience a bit more about, what you do on a day to day, and yeah, just a bit more about yourself, man. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm an anatomical pathologist, which means that I look down under the microscope and deal with the tissue that gets operated on. So whoever does the operation, from a small nevus to a big, large colon cancer, it comes to us. We basically process the tissue and make the diagnosis. So that's what I do. So my work is not seeing the patients during the day, and my actual work is like diagnostic. So that's what I do.
Got it, man. And what inspired? I'd love to know a bit more about your journey getting to that point, Amir. Right? Because I know obviously you had to go to medical school, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
Let's go into that. What kind of inspired you to go down that route, and how did you end up being so specific with what you're doing now with the not just pathology, is specifically dealing with tissue, right?
Yeah. So what happened to me was like, when you go to the medical school, you're too young. I was 18 years old. So
Wow.
I always wanted to be a doctor from when I was a child. So that was something like that. So there was not enough like insight into it per se when I was younger. But then when you go to medical school, then that's like a journey that's very repetitive for all people, and depends on your personality. People get some people don't like it after a while. It's not for me. And some people just choose different sort of practices. And for me, I did different because my uni was in Tehran, Iran. I'm from Iran. And then when I came to Australia, I did all the exams and rotation, surgical, obs and gynae, internal medicine and everything. And after psychiatry. And after a while, I saw all of it. And then I decided I like to see more involved to the sort of process of the disease, seeing that those type of things and helping more making the diagnosis as to treating patients. And so that was the reason I went to this sort of field of pathology. But then my interest in sort of more natural medicine, or if you want to call it alternative medicine, came years after that. Because when I was a pathologist, then one of my family members got a disease, MS, multiple sclerosis, and they tried like everything, all the treatments that they can together with no good response. And then I thought to myself, there should be more into it, like than treatments and modern medicine. So then, because of my background, I'm Iranian. We are sort of involved with the traditional medicine. The way that we have the traditional medicine is like Ayurvedic medicine, Indian medicine. It's very similar. So I was sort of familiar with that, but I never thought that they are sort of effective. But then that was the start of a rabbit hole. and I started to teach myself a lot of traditional medicine, then a lot of alternative medicine, different type of diets. I started to experiment those diets on myself. So I have been a vegan, a vegetarian, a carnivore, everything to sort of test on my body with the blood test and everything to see how it affects it. And after that, I sort of gained experience with that. I saw some people, but all of that, if you want to look at it as a hobby and sort of basically an advice, and every now and then, so I see patients as well, but mainly, for very serious disease like cancers or very sort of advanced cancers and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's such an interesting story. There's so much to touch on there. But you mentioned about someone close to you getting multiple sclerosis. And my mum, unfortunately, was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune illness called systemic sclerosis. I'm not sure if you've heard of that.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's quite a rare one, and it's very complex as well in terms of how it impacts different people, in terms of
Yes.
the different stages and what parts of the body and the connective tissue and the obviously she overproduces collagen. But anyway, that's another conversation. But there's pretty much like an epidemic of that now, right? In terms of autoimmune illness, right? Because I think
Exactly.
last time I checked, I think it was cancer was number one in terms of mortality rate. Then it was I think heart disease, and I think autoimmune illness is not too far behind that now, right? I think.
And autoimmune disease is very closely related to cancer. So usually people have autoimmune disease that is undiagnosed, and after 15 years or 20 years, it becomes cancerous in some other even parts of the body, and then they realize they had a problem. Usually it starts with thyroid. Whoever got any type of cancer, they don't have a very sort of good thyroid function. Almost always the thyroid is abnormal. So, and that's starts an autoimmune disease in the body. And it starts from guts as well as the root cause, but manifests as thyroid problems.
Makes so much sense. And I've coached so many people, I can't even tell you how many people I've coached now with thyroid issues or they've had type 2 diabetes. In fact, a lot of clients have simply reversed type 2 diabetes. In fact, I had one client, even after it was 4 months, tell a lie, she reversed her hypothyroidism, just
Yeah.
from, fueling her body with better nutrients and everything else. So let's touch on that now because it's a very complex, but also a very important topic to touch on, right? Is metabolic health. And you just mentioned them, right? Obviously, thyroid function, this is all interlinked to your body's ability to essentially utilize calories properly, the visceral fat around your organs and all that kind of stuff, right? So I'd love you to just touch on that in terms of the impact of the way we eat, for example. I know you touched on diet then, and the way we live, our lifestyle, and the impact of those two things in particular, and just everything health related to our metabolic health.
Yeah. What happens is the way that the conversation in the atmosphere of the carnivore people is always they sort of presume that people are eating very healthily, like very natural sort of thing.
Such
It's
a
not.
good point.
Yeah, 99% of the people eating a lot of junk or mainly predominantly junk food. And junk food is considered as something chemical, something that is made in the lab, basically. And there is a lot of that in our food, and it's very, very difficult to find a food that is not contaminated by some sort of chemicals. And what does these chemicals do? There are some sort of fences between the cells in the intestine. So your intestine cells are not static, they're dynamic. So every now and then these gates get open. And depends on all those chemicals go to your bloodstream, it picked up by your thyroid because thyroid is the kitchen in the house. All the energy and metabolism control comes from thyroid. So when these antibodies go to your into your bloodstream, your white blood cells pick it up as a toxin, as something abnormal. And it goes to different places, especially thyroid. And because it's a foreign material, body excretes antibody against those material. And because they happen to be in a tissue, you get autoimmune disease in that tissue. That's why autoimmune disease affecting the thyroid, which are called Hashimoto's disease or Graves' disease or this kind of name is very common. The reason is thyroid is a place that a lot of these junks end up being in and then being targeted by those antibodies. That's one thing. Then the second problem is metabolic disease. Basically, is a liver problem, gut liver problem. Whatever you eat, it's processed in the liver. And if you eat a lot of junk, if you eat a lot of mixed food, or if you eat a lot of like unhealthy rich carbohydrate food, then you put a lot of pressure on the liver. And after a while, liver sort of give up. And then the functionality of the liver to get rid of the toxins from the body will drop. And after that, you start to get the disease. And on top of that, too much calorie. Too much calorie, very little burning. So because the way the body accumulates sugar after a while, first of all, insulin works. And after a while, insulin doesn't work. And then it's in shape of fat. So your fat cells get bigger and bigger. The funny thing is you are born with sort of the same number of fat cells as you die. So the number doesn't get increased, but the volume of the fat cells can get 10,000, 100,000 bigger than what it can be. So basically you can dry up your fat cells, become thin, or you can fatten them up and become very fat. That's basically what it is.
Wow, that makes so much sense, man. And you were saying about metabolic disease essentially being liver dysfunction, right? Or
Yes.
the liver not operating like it should be.
Yep.
And you also, I want to just touch on something you said there that you made a really good point on people who, are in the carnivore space and people who talk about it and preach about it, because it's worked for them and it's helped a lot of people they've seen firsthand, right? And I'm sure you've seen this as well, especially going back to autoimmune. You see people with certain autoimmune ailments and they might have serious gut issues. They might have, hypothyroidism even, sorry, or even Hashimoto's, all these different, and sometimes carnivore, at least in the short term, can be a fix because people are cutting out, going back to what you said, all the ultra processed food, right? So
Yes.
it's a tricky one in terms of, okay, is it that carnivore is magical or is it just because, like you said, all the chemicals, they just basically cut them all out and gone from one extreme to another. But then that approach, as you say, they assume people are eating healthy in the carnivore, like, okay, switch over to carnivore, try it out. But the thing is, they've been eating processed food, primarily processed foods, up until that point, refined sugars and everything else, chemicals. So going from that to all or nothing, it's not a sustainable approach for most people,
Yes, and that's very correct. There are three questions, three main topics in what you said. One is, what is the best diet for a human being? That's a separate question. Then the second thing is why carnivore diet helps if it helps. And the third question is it sustainable forever, or is it has to be used as a tool in your toolbox to treat people? These are the main three questions that we can talk about if you like.
Love that, man. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. The first thing is carnivore diet is considered as a restrictive diet, by which we mean that it's a very pure diet. You eat something that is very pure, and that's benefiting to that. That's why if you eat any type of pure natural diet at the beginning, if you are off a chemical heavy fast food diet, would do good to your body. So people who are become vegan first few months, they feel much better because they just got rid of a lot of those toxins. But after a while, they get more toxins from the way that they eat. The same for a carnivore diet. So it's a very good tool for any disease. So if I've got a patient with a serious disease, even autoimmune disease or cancer, the first thing I do, I try to put them in a very close carnivore diet, maybe not at the beginning pure carnivore diet, but something very close. And that would do a miracle, especially for autoimmune disease. That by itself is enough. And in a lot of cancers, even high-grade cancers, by itself, it would be enough. And that's very amazing, but it works to some extent. But if you are not seriously ill, you don't need to do that, and this is the wisdom of the very old traditional medicine. Whoever got ill, they used to fast them, something that doctors now thinking is contraindicated because they're thinking that they're going to die of hunger. But in the old days, they used to fast them and reintroduce food little by little to any sick patient. And that's the best way to do in terms of any acute or chronic patient. So fasting is in there as well. But you have to look at the carnivore diet as type of a fasting. Why? Because carnivore diet, if you want to eat just basically meat, you have to eat a lot to get the calorie to stay the same weight. That's the first thing. The second thing is, depends on your body type. You might lack some minerals, especially magnesium, and it could be some other things. So your body tends to lose salt more than when you have the carbohydrate. And that can be very threatening for some people. And so it depends on, if you want, we can go deeper what type of the body is more suitable for carnivore or not. But anyway, that's another topic. And then the question is carnivore keto? Because some people thinking that carnivore is equal to ketogenic diet, which is not. Okay. Ketogenic diet is a very calorie restricted diet, because even if you have pure fat, no meat, pure fat, if you had more than certain grams of that fat, you bounce out of the ketogenesis. That's something a lot of people don't know. They think that if you have pure fat, doesn't matter how much you eat to satisfaction and you stay in ketosis. Some people do, but a lot of people don't. So you have to look at the ketogenic diet, a pure carnivore diet, in my opinion, as a tool in treating people. Okay, so that treatment may be weight loss or maybe cancer. That's a different topic. Then, in a long run, you have to have a lifestyle which is very close to carnivore, so have enough meat, enough animal fat, and other carbohydrates, natural carbohydrates to that as well. Depends on the body type, depends on the lifestyle of the people, depends on the sustainability of that lifestyle for them, and a lot of other things. And that sort of, in my opinion, answered the third question: what is the optimal diet for a human being? You know, we have the carnivore animals like ducks. They don't have any bacteria in their colon. So if you go give almonds to your dog, you just shit it out. There's no processing. But human beings got a lot of bacteria. There's a reason for that, because through the us becoming a human, there was a sort of evolution, if you like, to have those bacteria as foreign contributors to our body. What they do, they process the fibers and they create vitamins, and they create neurotransmitters such as melatonin. After 40 years, your brain doesn't secrete any melatonin. All the melatonin comes from your colon, from the bacteria. So you need fiber for that. And that's why, to me, optimal. And any sort of restrictive diet, you always have to complement it with something. You have to have vitamins or something. So it means that it's not complete, even the carnivore diet. So you have to have the magnesium. So in my opinion, the best diet is something that some people call it a paleo diet, or these things. These are loose terms. I don't like to call it, but depends on what your genetics are, what your ancestors. By ancestors, I don't refer to thousand years ago, but I mean your granddad or in your family, how they eat, where are you from, where do you live. The temperature is very important in your diet, and how do you feel good. And by feeling good, to me, is you're opening your bowels every day, nice and good sort of quality of the excretion, plus you don't feel tired, you have optimal energy, you're active, your mind is not foggy. This means that your diet is good. You're doing a good thing. Keep going. And that's sort of the very short and eclectic approach of me to that. Is a lot of sort of details, but
No, I love that, man. That was so easy to break down for the audience. And it is so complex, though, right? As you just said, then from person to person, there's so much individual variance, right, with nutrition. Like you
exactly.
just mentioned, where are you from originally, your genetics, you can get gut testing nowadays and everything else. But what you said right at the end just simplified everything, really. It's one of those things where if you're feeling great and you're performing extremely well, and your gut health is good, as you say, which is something we'll touch on, then great. It sounds like you're doing okay. But something I want to touch on today is like metabolic flexibility. But before we get to that, you mentioned about different body types on
Yes.
carnivore and different types of diets. And for the audience as well, the paleo diet, you could say, is more like the hunter-gatherer diet, right? Where it's mainly, meat. It's gluten-free, I believe, right? No gluten or dairy or any.
Yeah. So
It's
what?
still
So
some vegetables, right? And fruit.
yeah. So what happens is, to me, the best diet should avoid any sort of artificial dairy. So if you've got access to raw, pure dairy, that's a different story. The only dairy that is good for human, because of the thousands and thousands of the years of living together, is goat. So people they are not allergic to goat, and it's a good dairy. So no legumes. Legumes, only the leaves of the legumes should be used. And that's what our ancestors used to eat them. So when you grow the legumes like lentils or uh, any legumes, you have to eat the leaves of that, not the actual legume and the seed. The other thing is the same applies to potatoes and anything under the ground. So for anything under the ground, if you don't want to put weight on, you have to eat the leaves, because the leaves got all the good minerals, not the actual. That the only thing that's full of sugar. And so nothing under the ground, no legumes, no basically artificial dairy. Anything else, basically as much as you want. And the other thing is, it's a very new thing that we eat raw vegetables. Human beings in different cultures, they don't like eating raw vegetables. It's too difficult. No one does it. Even it's too difficult to chew them. People don't
Mm,
like it. So
mm.
if you, for example, older people, if you ask them, they never have a broccoli. They
Yeah.
even make fun of you say it's for goat. And that's correct. So we have to use to make pickle them or make sauerkraut, so
They're
ferment
like
the
ferment. Yeah, yeah,
vegetables.
yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
So these are the ways to eat them, or the way that you cook them with different spices. For example, a lot of herbs you have to make tea out of any drink. Not actually. One of the problems in the modern life is having too much fiber. Too much fiber is very bad for the body. No fiber, you can do it, but in my opinion, you need to have a little bit of fiber for those bacteria to make you vitamins. But too much fiber is very bad for everyone. And we have too much fiber. Like the things that we need to get the tea of, we eat the vegetables, we eat it
Mm.
raw. And that's big problem.
When I look back, it's funny you say that because what switched me over to the animal-based world, right, was I read Paul Saladino's book initially, The Carnivore
Yes.
Code,
Yeah.
and I was getting lots of gut issues. Long story short, right, and
Yeah.
what I decided was, okay, I'm going to have a little look into this, and I was having like 70 to 80 grams of fiber a day, right, and on top of
Yes.
that, loads of sweet potatoes. That was one of the worst things I pinpointed was potatoes for my guts, sweet potatoes, and obviously oxalates, and obviously it's a root vegetable, as you said, right, comes from under the ground,
Yes.
but it just didn't agree with me. And I was eating loads of broccoli. And I enjoy those foods. Funny thing is, you put a bowl of cooked broccoli in front of me now with like cauliflower, add some salt and olive oil. I love it, right? But I just don't eat it because it just doesn't agree with me as well. But I was having so much fiber. So let's touch on that point there as well, right? And there's different types of fiber as well. And going back to what you
Yeah.
said of processed foods, right? Even like cellulose, for example, that they add to cheese and stuff. I saw something recently where it's made in one of those paper mill factories, right? So essentially, it's like cardboard. You're eating
Exactly.
wood essentially, right? So
That's what exactly it is. Yeah.
yeah, so talk us through the function of fiber and why you think having too much of it is not ideal for most humans or all
Yeah,
humans.
because exactly, the thing is fiber and vegetables. For that, you have to have the foregut. That's what the animals, the omnivores, no, sorry, the what you regurgitate, like the cows or the sheep do. Because what you should have a very long stomach to get to the fibers because you have to break them down before it reaches your intestine. Human body doesn't have that long stomach, and because this stomach is short, the acid of that it just can break down so much of it can. And the other problem is at the moment, almost everyone is on antacids of some sort, like the proton pump inhibitors, like and it's very bad because when the acidity of the stomach goes down, that's the first sign you get sick. We can talk about it later. But anyway, so that's why we cannot process too much fat. That's a problem. And we cannot process harsh fiber. Like, some fiber is not for eating. For example, if you have uh, a, a cauliflower, so the stem of the cauliflower is a very harsh fiber. You can eat it, but it's not good for you. And so what happens with that is you have to get fiber from the things that you don't think that they are very fibrous. For example, avocado, for example, mango. They are very fibrous fruits, but people don't know it because it's soft. So those are good fibers. And if you have enough of them from the natural sources, because all the synthetic food, they're thinking that if they add elements together, it will be good, but it become very toxic. For example, they purify salt and add iodine to that, and it's very toxic doing that because these things in nature is different because they're coming into different sulfates, citrates, different sort of complex molecules that they come together in a salt, sea salt, for example. But when you're trying to purify things and add things one by one, that's what the problem happens. And that's why people going to they have like very harsh fibers, like these things that even your body cannot digest at all, like the psyllium, that you get from the pharmacy. And it's just for bulking up and absorbing the water to the rectum for them to be able to open the bowels. So it means that you're constipated. You're constipated, but you're trying to forcefully get rid of that. But what you need to do, you need to change your diet for your bowel movements to get better, not to get the constipation. But it's not the way that medicine looks at these things. They want it just to band-aid treatment, get rid of it. That's it. That's healthy. And that's the
Mhm.
problem.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
And you talked about as well excess calories, right? I think this is something that gets kind of overlooked. People say, "Oh, keto diet, I gain weight." I hear this a lot, right? And going back to what you said, because fats are very calorie dense, right? When you start
yeah,
adding extra fats, got to be
yeah.
aware that the most calorie dense macronutrient, right, is fats. And people then they eat too many calories, right? So because people are eating in excess calories, it makes a lot of the stuff you're eating like it could be, oh, I had too much saturated fat, but that combined with excess calories or any kind of, if it's a lot harder to have actually you do see it, right, excess protein, but generally people are overeating like fats and carbs, right, when they're overeating. It's the combination of those two things, highly palatable
Exactly.
foods. So that's the issue, right? That's when things become really problematic, is when people are obviously gaining weight, gaining visceral fat as a byproduct, and just overeating calories, right?
That's part of the problem. The other part of the problem, for example, is the vegetable oils. Vegetable, you cannot have a healthy body on vegetable oil at all. Doesn't matter if you what sort of natural food you eat or having a good sort of calorie restriction. The actual oil makes your body stuff up, and that's a problem. So it's the quality of what you eat is important. And then the second thing is eating too much. If just imagine, it's a sedentary life is a very recent thing that we know. If you work and you know that you don't feel hungry. So the normal thing is having a breakfast before 10 a.m., then exercise or do a normal work that involves your body. Have a very, very light lunch, as if, and I'm not saying salads or stuff like that, but for people who have had like 5 almonds is good, or maybe one egg or two eggs, depends on what you have. Keep going and have an early dinner. And if you have that, you won't put on fat, and you never feel hungry, because if you eat properly, after a while, your body get used to what you eat. And that's a problem. And that's a problem solver. But people don't let it happen because they eat a lot of snacks, they eat a lot of junk foods. And as you said, the combination 50% of oil and sugar makes the dopamine secretes in the brain, and it's an empty calorie. Basically, it doesn't extend your stomach, it doesn't regulate your hormones that makes your brain stop feeling hungry. And as you eat more and more, and that's a vicious cycle that keeps going, and we know all about that. So, and it's intentional, the food industry and the medicine and everything, they work together. And that's because unfortunately it's a profit-based business now. So they want people to be sick, and that's all contribute to that. So staying healthy in this day and age needs a lot of effort. First of all, needs a lot of education. You have to educate yourself, and needs a lot of, not a lot, but you have to put money in it as well. So that's why a lot of people don't do
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
it.
And that's the thing. People always are looking for the answer as well, right? For the quick fix. And,
Exactly.
you said this at the start, right? It is a restrictive diet. If you look at carnivore, for example, yeah, okay, you're getting most of the essential nutrients you need, right? If you eat in a proper carnivore diet, but that's not going to be ideal long term for most people. And metabolic flexibility, right? So when it comes to you having the ability to have that kind of metabolic freedom, I explain it in a simple way. It's almost like training, for example, right? If you're doing strength training, you're trying to get in shape, or any type of training you're doing, your body adapts, right? The body's an adaptation machine.
Yes.
So when it comes to you, if you're eating the same, I eat similar things, most days, but having that flexibility, like you say, using it as a tool, right? I know myself, I would benefit now. I'm not doing it because I enjoy carbohydrates too much, right? But I know I would benefit now from, eating keto for, say a week or two. I know that would benefit me. I feel better when I do that. It seems to reduce a little bit of inflammation, which I'm not always aware I've got at the time when I'm eating certain foods, but I just feel sharper. And obviously your body switches into a different energy system and stuff like that. So talk us through metabolic flexibility and what you see, in all the people you've seen with patients and whatnot, when it comes to the big things you mentioned there, getting the nutrients in that you need, and basically what's sustainable.
Yeah. So basically, for the patient that I need to be very strictly keto, it's very important. It's very difficult to gain. And my rule of thumb is the best way to do that is starting early. So don't push people to get keto quickly, because for some people it doesn't happen. And that's flexibility, as you say, that I have witnessed. If a person become ketogenic once, then the body learns. It's like a muscle memory in the body. So the second time will be
Interesting.
much easier. And for the first time, it's very different because people sometimes don't know. People don't think something as carbohydrate. and they're thinking a little bit of that is not important. So it takes a few different people, different personalities, different age, differently, but at the end, everyone gets there. And when they feel the feeling in the body, they don't need to check their ketone, because they exactly can say, "Oh, my ketone is that level now because I feel that way." And best way to get into ketogenesis is the fasting. But I'm not a fan of very prolonged fasts. My fasting, I like to be so when you wake up, basically you don't eat and drink till when the sun sets. Nothing. Okay. So drinking for some people is very difficult, so they cannot do that. So for those people, we add chamomile tea with no sugar or anything, but that's it. But for other people, that they can stop drinking as well, because if your body become dehydrated, you become ketogenic quicker. So it's for those patients that we want to get them into ketosis quickly. So that helps with that, but you have to hydrate yourself, a lot of salt, and it has to be sea salt because you need the magnesium. And even that, for some people, they should be added the magnesium on top of it. And or make your food very diverse, which becomes for some people, very annoying, because you have to have oysters or different types of meat in your things, raw meat, some type, and other things that some people don't like. A lot of people, for them, it's too difficult to have animal fat at the beginning because they haven't had for their life. So it's a bit of a refusal or rejection, or mentally they don't like it, but as soon as they get used to it. So I always say that you have to be inventive, like making the food the way that you like it to eat, but be sure that it's that much and that type. And that's the main thing.
Yeah, I love it, man. I think the main thing as well is very simple is protein intake, right?
Yes.
When
And I play
people
with the eggs, especially for kids. My
eggs,
main way of the
choline,
diet
is that because of choline mainly, or is it different? It's like a perfect multivitamin egg, isn't it? An egg
It
yolk.
is. It is an egg yolk. An egg yolk is a sweet spot 2-to-1 fat to protein ratio. So if you don't have too much of it, you stay in ketosis easily. The other thing is egg yolks. You can mix it and have it raw, but white you cannot because you get the E. coli. So, but the egg yolk, because you can have it raw, is easy to eat and digest. It's a very digestible protein. Because one of the other problem I have with the carnivore people, they have too much on hard digestive protein. That's a problem. Okay, it's not for everyone. Okay, so for example, your body is obviously by looking at you, I can say that how much protein you can digest. But some other people, if it's like 80-year-old lady with stage 4 cancer, for
Yeah.
example, they cannot have that. So for them, is raw yolk. That's it.
Got it, got it. So when you have muscle mass as well, right? So you look at me, I've got more muscle mass as well.
Yeah,
Obviously, I've got more. It's like a metabolic sink, isn't it? When you've got that muscle mass, right? So obviously, that plays a part on your ability to digest the protein as well, because your body requires more of it, right?
exactly. And the other thing is because I've seen a lot of carnivore activists or bloggers, or they one of the sort of things they said, oh, you eat whatever you want, how much you want, how much do you want? If you want to have 5 kilos, have 5 kilos. To me, is wrong. Too much meat would put pressure on your body, on your liver, on your even muscles. It's not good for you, too much meat. So you have to have enough meat for yourself. And it's different from a person to a person. But then you have to play with the type of the meat you eat, with the way you cook it, with the way you marinate it, or a lot of other things come to the play. But yeah, it's not one or the prescription for everyone, unfortunately.
It's not, no, 100%. And that's what I find with coaching, it's always challenging because I'm always meeting people where they're at, right? So
Yes,
that's what a good coach is going to do, and a good doctor like yourself as well. You're meeting someone where they're at, right? It's not, okay, yeah, this is what on paper, you could look at something on paper. Oh, that's great. Well, okay, let's have a look, like you say, personality type. Let's have a look at your past history. Most people are being overweight. Most people are literally, those processed foods like hijack our brains, right? So that it's changed the way your brain actually wires. And I went through this struggle myself back in the day. So, but having adequate protein, and I always keep a simple number, like a gram per pound of body weight. I mean, again, people require different amounts, but I think it's just a simple number to put out there for people, because most people I speak to, they're into strength training as well. So, but then digestion, you got to pay, and per meal, right? Because we, even with Ben, right? You know, I know he had an issue, and that's another thing I wanted to touch on as well, is the combination of food, right? So having meat and fruit together. You mentioned about acidity. Talk a little more about that. I know it's different from person to person, but the
Yeah, and to be
combinations of
honest,
food.
this one is not different even,
Okay.
because yeah, because the way it is, and that's another ancient wisdom in all the traditional medicine. They say that eat the food by itself. If you see the Chinese medicine say that, and Ayurvedic and Persian medicine say that as well, by which they mean that you shouldn't have something that is very, for example, if you have, what happens if you have an apple with a steak, or have a dessert with your, some sort of cake with your steak. What happens is, if you have your cake half an hour before your steak, it's okay, because it goes to your stomach, it passes, your insulin will secrete. Some of them will be burnt, some of them will become fat. That's it. And then you have your steak, you're good. But if you have a steak first, your steak will stay in your stomach for 4 hours, and your cake will go there, and the acidity of the stomach, while trying to digest the meat, it will super digest your cake or your fruit, and it pickles it, and the pickle creates vinegar, and that vinegar comes back as reflux here. Okay, so a lot of people, if you show them how to eat, their reflux will go away. They don't eat anything. Okay, and that's a very important thing. So if you want to have a carbohydrate, any type of food, it doesn't matter, it has to be one food. So it's ridiculous if you only have one food at each time, each setting. But in each setting, you should have food similar to each other. For example, fruits and cakes, very sort of carbohydrate material that doesn't need too much digestion. But if you're having any meat, you should have it half an hour after that, or you should have that cake or things 3 hours or 4 hours after your meaty, basically main dish of the day. Because other than that, you get all your reflux. And the other problem is, all these things, when you go through your small bowel, it reach the liver, then the liver doesn't know how to deal with it, because the way that the liver do the last digestion on the meat is so different from cake. So that you put a lot of pressure. And one of the things that happens to the people is very funny. Even if they don't have the fiber, a lot of people will have the gas. And the gas is because too much pressure on your liver. Whenever you have too much gas, but you don't think that you had like some gas forming food, is pressure on your liver. So you're eating too much, or you're eating bad, mixing food together. And the other thing is very helpful, chewing food. Because all of us chew food not enough, all of us. And that's why they say that when you have lunch, don't do other activities, just focus on your eating, because that's a way that you chew them better. The other thing is having a little bit of sea salt prior and after your food. So before you eat, have a little pinch of salt. I'm talking about main food, because that a little bit of salt reaches your stomach first and creates your stomach to produce more acid. And that would digest your food better. And after the food, if you do that, it will get rid of a little bit of acidity that comes back from your stomach. So salt will do both ways, and it's very good.
Wow, it's fascinating, isn't it? But that's the only thing. It's like, who's going to eat a cake before their steak, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, if
That's
you
the thing. So that's
that.
funny. I don't know if you follow football, soccer. There is,
Not much.
no, not much. There's a big player. He's Polish. His name is Lewandowski. He plays for Barca. He's a big player.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of him. I've heard of him.
And he's super ripped. And he's now, I think, around 38, and still very super ripped. And his thesis in the uni was that he proposed that if you have your dessert before your lunch, you won't put on weight. He did it
Wow.
with experience. Because he said that, and he used to do that himself, but that was funny. And
Well, that's
then,
interesting, though, right? Because you can imagine his calorie output compared to the average person in being an athlete. So he
yeah,
could say that because he burns so much. Think how much he's burned for his whole life at that level. But the thing is, with
exactly.
those foods, like we say, like a cake makes you want to eat more. I know even me, I have certain foods I just don't go near. I don't really have the desire to. It's not like real
Yeah.
food now. But for example, cake, it used to be like, oh man, I have to try and resist that. Now I look at it and it's not even like real food. And I know if I eat like it just something goes off in my brain where I want to eat more and more. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I tell you a personal story. When I was on a carnivore diet, I was on it for a year basically. I
Okay.
didn't go. It didn't go well with me, and
So a whole year eating strict carnivore.
a sea carnivore,
Wow.
because I was experimenting on myself, because I wanted to order it for other patients. So I
Of
should
course.
know about it. And then after a year, even a lemon was too sweet for me.
No doubt. And that's super bitter and acidic. It's not even a sweet fruit at
And
all.
that's so funny. And then I didn't like even the face of a cake because I didn't even think that I can have that sweet thing because even a lemon was sweet. Right? And that was funny. So your taste become sort of refreshed in a sense.
Yeah.
Like if
Like
someone smokes and
hypersensitive.
they quit smoking, then they start having the taste back because it
It's
regrows.
funny you say that because I had the same thing because I used to do a lot of bodybuilding comps and I remember eating berries after a show before because I wasn't eating sugar. I was just having like potatoes and stuff for carbs. And I remember I had this strawberry and I was like, it was like almost like having a tub of Ben and Jerry's. You know what I mean? The same equivalent is unbelievable. But
Yeah.
that's a really good point. I want to ask you on that as well, right? Because I feel it can't be ideal long term as well when you cut out like whole food groups, especially if you're someone who eats, let's say you're eating mainly whole foods, let's say 80, 90% whole foods, right? Real foods. And then you go, right, I'm going to do carnivore for, let's say, 6 months, and you cut out whole food groups. It can be ideal then when you bring them back in. Yeah, it might be good. It might be some pros to that, right? Because then your body's like, okay, these foods are no good for us. So you're then aware of, oh, this food doesn't work for me. But it can make you probably intolerant, I would imagine, to certain foods then as well, right?
Yeah, exactly true. And a few things in there. One is why would you do that? Okay. If something is not bad for you, it's even good for you. For example, I would say that pumpkin is a very good food if you don't put toxin in it, that you can. And for example, you can grow pumpkin anywhere in a pot if you like, or zucchini, or a lot of things are good and they're yummy and tasty, and you would deprive yourself from the joy of life if you do that. And that's a problem because people who are going on a restrictive diet, after a while, they become a bit OCD about it. They become very defensive and they're thinking that they are right, other people are wrong. Or in the mind, if they do something, they think, oh, they shouldn't have done it. And it's not good for you because a lot of people who live long, they never think about eating. They eat healthy, but they never think about what they eat is good or bad. Or, they have to do exercise, they walk or do gardening or this and that. So this is a part of a life that we sort of in a modern life because we live in YouTube, a lot of us. That's that's a problem. So you become a bit OCD about the thing is very bad. And the other thing is you learn how to cook or make things. For example, you make your wine or you make your cider or you make your pickle or a lot of other things joyful and you learn a lot and you get a lot of benefit. For example, I can give you a concoction from garlic and honey and ginger. It's very good for heart, for example, for people who have heart disease or ischemic disease or any food is got good and bad in it. And you have to sort of look at it as a way of a medicine, not too much of it, or if you want too much of it, if you have a knowledge of it or not. And that's very important because food is a medicine. For example, people who get lymphomas, okay, usually they do very well on carnivore. But people who get breast cancer, they don't. They
Interesting.
need, yeah, very interesting. So they do even a little bit better on a vegetarian dominant diet.
Hmm.
It's very interesting. And I can
Why do you
tell
reckon that
you,
is then? I'm curious to know why you
because
reckon that is. Because obviously hormones, I would imagine as well. Obviously breast cancer.
I can tell you in two different languages. Do you want the ancient language and the modern language?
Whatever you reckon, my man. Hit us with it.
Okay, both. The ancient language. The ancient language, everything is balance. Okay. People who get breast cancer in the ancient wisdom, they have some problem with their basically what they do is suppression of anger. Okay. So they need some food for them that be light, happy, sweet. So carbohydrate is good for them. Okay. And it's funny because you think that, oh, cancer cells eat carbohydrates or this and that, but it's not that simple. It's a very multifactorial thing. And I've seen it in my experience, they do better on a vegetarian diet. And so it's all about balance. And for the lymphoma people, in the old wisdom, lymphoma people is a lazy disease. They're thinking that the blood become lazy. And that's right. And meat is good for that. Now I translate it in the modern medicine. If you ask me, it's about sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. You know that the autonomic nerve
Yeah, so
system,
the rest and digest would be the
rest and
parasympathetic.
digest, fear
Sympathetic
and
is
yeah,
flight and flight,
exactly.
fight or
Okay.
flight.
You can affect that with your food. You can affect that with your breathing and you can affect that with your sleep and everything. Okay. So for the lymphoma people, for some reason, they've got an overaction of the parasympathetic thing. So if, although they say that the parasympathetic nerves are good, too much of that causes you problem. And that's translated to lazy blood. Too much parasympathetic means lazy.
I was thinking that rest and digest too much can be a good thing, I would imagine.
Yeah, and that's interesting because meat, when you eat meat, it creates the anxiety hormones in your body.
I can imagine, because it's very stressful for the body essentially to digest it, right?
So it's very good for them. And that's a lot of other things. For example, lymphoma happens with certain genetics. For example, Northern European people, if you want as a pure thing like Scandinavian people, they're usually having a blood group of O, blood group O. Those people are doing very well on carnivore diet.
Okay.
And they are the people who get lymphoma.
Wow.
So put one of them on vegetarian diet, probably they get lymphoma. Or not directly, but that's as a multifactorial thing is a factor. Okay. People in Mediterranean or Middle Eastern like me, I'm not doing very well on meat only diet or a very heavy meat diet. I should have
You
my
still
own
you still
carbohydrates.
pushed it out for a year, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, I did, and it was, to be honest, at the end, even with the magnesium or too much salt, I couldn't walk up the hill.
Wow.
I was getting sick, and very funny because it was not about energy. It was about, I think there was something wrong in the muscle. So there was some, I think, imbalance in the electrolytes.
Yeah,
Or
electrolytes. I was going to say, and if you look at just muscle stimulation, you mentioned about sodium, right? When you're having that low carbohydrates, it's very easy to dehydrate the muscles as well, and then
you do,
magnesium with cramps and everything else.
you do. But the funny thing is, it's not just about adding salt will solve your problem.
Yeah,
It's
of
like
course.
not
No,
drinking water will
no,
hydrate
of
your body.
course.
It
The
doesn't.
body's trying to tell you something, in it? It's like you can put in all the electrolytes you want, but after a while, the body's probably saying, okay, because even Paul Saladino, for example, right?
Yeah.
He did the same thing. He was strict carnivore. I don't know if you know his story. He was strict carnivore at one point, and then he did all, and he was preaching about it, right, to the world, saying
Yes.
this is the
It changed a
optimal
lot.
diet for humans. Yeah, exactly. And then he realized, and credit to him, right? He called himself out. He realized then, after getting his bloods done and not feeling good and having compromised sleep, testosterone levels were down, cortisol levels are through the roof, et cetera, et cetera. So now he eats, animal based, right? Which is mainly just like meat and fruit and,
Yeah.
good quality raw dairy, as you mentioned. And I noticed myself as well. I track my sleep. I use this Oura ring just to see what the data is. And I find myself, like I said earlier, if I went like a week or two keto, that would be a good thing. It would probably improve my sleep. I don't track, I don't see my, if I'm actually going into ketosis, but like yourself, I don't eat. I only eat in quite a small window every day anyway. So I've done a lot of intermittent fasting, and I feel like my body kind of maybe dips in and out of keto anyway. But I just noticed I feel way better if I do a couple of weeks. If I push it further than that, because I did the same thing last year. So I did 2 months last year. I did 1 year where I did literally I was just eating meat and eggs, and I was having some beef tallow, maybe a bit of ghee oil for 1 month. But then I went hardcore. Then in October last year, I think I did 15 days. That's all of the month, which is just lion, right? Just meat and salt. So I was having one meal. I was having like 1.5 kilos of Scotch fillet steak, one meal, salt. I'm telling you, like nothing affects my libido, right? I can't remember, other than when I was competing and getting on stage back in the day, but obviously that's going to. But I noticed like towards the end of, and pushing it out, right? Like you say, you said you're going to do it. So you're almost going against your body signals at that point, which is stupid, which is what a lot of people do. And I was just like, yeah, this is not good, but I got to see the month out now. And I got to the end of it and I was just exhausted. I'm like, what am I doing to myself? Like it took me a couple of days to get my libido back up.
Yeah.
My sleep, like a day or two, and then my sleep. I thought my sleep was decent at the time, which it was, but then it went to optimal again. I was getting, uninterrupted sleep and all that kind of stuff. So you could take things too far, right? And also, I want to touch on that as well with stress. With going too far, you mentioned about like having carnivores more of like a, let's just say, sympathetic, right? Let's say when you're eating a lot of meat, the body has to work hard, digest it, etc. Right? So if you're having kind of, because for me in the daytime, I'm not sure how you do it. I have 2 meals a day, right? In the daytime, I'll just have protein and fat. So my meal today was meat, red meat, bit of avocado, and basically eggs. That's what I had for the first meal. I'll have some dark chocolate as well. That's another conversation, right? I throw that in there, and then for the last meal, then I'll tend to bring in my carbohydrates on the last meal then, and I feel sharper than in the daytime. So, generally probably I've got higher dopamine levels, maybe a bit more cortisol and stuff. But obviously, when you eat carbohydrates, then as well, you generally would release a bit more serotonin and stuff. Is that correct?
You do, and that serotonin and a lot of other molecules will make you feel make you full. You feel you're full, and that's a good thing. And then those hormones come down, you feel hungry because the lack of them. It's like, it's like, for example, a lot of people who wake up 3 a.m. every day, every night. One of the reason is because the blood sugar drops very low. Their body is not used to that. So the adrenaline will get secreted from the adrenal glands. And that adrenaline is like they're having exercise, so they wake them up. And they cannot go back to sleep. So for them, if they have a little bit of honey before they go to sleep, they usually just sleep through the night. So it's exactly the same. So when you do the exercise, all those molecules go up in your body and makes you full. And after that, you feel very hungry after like 1 hour.
Mm.
But that's okay. For your body type, you can have even more than that. You can have 4 or 5 meals a day, lighter. So because your body is suitable for that, I'm talking about traditional, not the
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
from
no,
the
I
shape
got
of your
it.
nose, shape of your face, your shoulders, the curl of your hair. I can sort of put you in a type, and that type, some sort of diet is good for them. Okay,
Got it.
so you can have a
It's
little.
funny you say that. It's funny because I know that. I actually know that, right? Because I was doing only 3 meals a day a few months ago and I felt better. I felt sharp. And actually, just not that I was trying to look better physically, but I just noticed my body just looked a bit better. And I felt sharper and stuff like that as well. And I know that. But for me, it's always like a convenience thing, innit? Because you're always thinking about productivity, like yourself, right? In the morning, I have my black coffee, crack on with work, break the fast lunchtime. You know what I'm saying? You just try and make
And you
it
train your body. You train your body
train your body.
in
Yeah.
anything. But when you get older, then you have to listen to your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there are two things. One is when people eat junk, their body tells them the wrong message. But when you eat healthily, then whatever happens to your body gives you a right alarm. So if you have a pain, it means that you're putting too much pressure on your knee, for example. Or if you're getting too hungry, it means that your dieting or timing is not right. So when you're young, as you say, and you just go through the day, you're distracted, that's fine.
Mm.
And for example, I used to drop breakfast for years. And then when I got a bit more sort of studied more, it's a very wrong thing to do.
Mm. It makes sense, and let's kind of wrap it up with that. I do want to touch on that, right? Because there's some research to show now as well, right? In terms of cortisol levels and all those kind of things, like eating earlier in the day, and as you mentioned about when the sun comes up and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Eating earlier in the day can be better for like sleep and health in general, right? It depends on the person, but generally,
So what happens is when you wake up, if you wake up before the sun rises, it's good because that's the way that it's the way that your melatonin, cortisol, and dopamine sort of in a circadian rhythm, as they say. So they sort of they're going through waves. So if you wake up before sun rises, it's good for you. Don't immediately drink or eat. Just give the body half an hour. 1 hour is very good. If you do walking or whatever, it's even better. Then start it with warm water or coffee. I usually have coffee, but I usually put some ginger and honey in it as well. But anyway, so coffee, the first thing probably is not a good thing. Having a bit of a warm water to sort of dilute the acidity of the stomach because your stomach is very acidic. So don't have solid food as the first thing in the morning. Always try to dilute it a little bit. And then having breakfast before 10 a.m. is very important, before 10 a.m. And then not a big lunch, but again, it's different from different body types. And then dinner should be 3 hours before sleep, 2, 3 hours. And you should have a little bit of carbohydrate for the people who wake up during the night. Because if you have 2, 3 hours before sleep, then 3 a.m. is the time that the food reaches your liver. And for some people, that's the time that they wake up. So depends on what you have. So that's the best way to eat. Now, the number of the food you have during the day, it depends on how you feel or your body type.
yeah, got it, man. I really appreciate the kind of guidance here and the advice, man, and the just the knowledge bombs there for the audience, right? And thing is, it's very complex, and it's good to just people have the awareness, right? And it's like
Yeah.
if they can just hear one thing and go, "Oh, okay, I'll try that." You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people who listen to this podcast, they're already at a decent level. They're already very health conscious. So it's like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that because And a lot of people that listen to this podcast as well, a lot of them have found me through the carnivore space, some of the big collaborations I do, and I'm always talking about what you're talking about. And it's like, you should never take anything too far one way, right? You've got to be super mindful of what's going to be best long term. Now, people who've got extreme autoimmune conditions and stuff like that, there's a small select amount of people, as you mentioned, some of the patients you see and stuff as well, right, with serious autoimmune issues, or you even mentioned cancer or whatever, very specific. Maybe it's keto, maybe it's carnivore, whatever that is. But generally, you want to be flexible with the way you eat, right? And you want to make sure that you're taking care of your gut health. But look, we could talk forever. We're going to have to do another one at some point, my man, right? But what I wanted to ask you to finish up with, what advice would you just give to people, or any kind of big rocks you would say to people, for people to focus on, to really kind of optimize their mental and physical health, just on a day to day, the simple things that you think people, because people focus so much on like the pebbles, Amir, right? Where they're like,
Yes.
okay, should I be taking, should I be taking this ashwagandha? Like, ashwagandha is really good, by the way. I don't want to, that's a terrible example, but should I be, should I be,
I get
should
the
I add
point.
lemon with the water? Like, they're not having enough protein. They're eating mainly ultra processed foods, right? They're not moving enough. They're like, should I be squeezing some lemon in my water in the morning? It's like, well, that's probably not. That's probably a pebble. You want to probably, move more and maybe eat more whole food,
Exactly. What I can say that sleeping is very important. We usually don't sleep well because any organ in the body has got some time to uh, during the sleep to basically get revised. And if you are awake at that time, you miss on the opportunity. So at least 10, 10:30, maximum 11 is good. You always have to go to sleep before midnight. So that's very important. If you can wake up early, that's a bonus. But so sleeping is very important. Rhythm of the sleeping, timing of the sleeping, and quality of the sleeping. And then diet to me should be what is good for you, what your ancestors used to eat. Try to put some effort in it. Food has to be baked. Food doesn't come out of the box. It's a new thing. We didn't used to be like that. And still a lot of us, I cook, even if I'm by myself in the middle of everywhere, I try to cook if I can. So cooking the food makes you learn about different things, and that's a good thing. And that's it. And I think a lot of the stress comes from lack of exercise, because I totally believe that your normal mental state depends on physical state. So if you are not in a good physical shape, you are not in a good mental shape, you don't know it. So you're gonna break, or you're gonna be aware of it sometime. So I think the main problem in this age, because people don't do exercise, they eat bad, they sleep bad. So these three things, and looks simple, sounds simple, but I don't think it's simple. But anyway.
No, I love that you touched the three big rocks, which they're always the most important things, right? People, I like Andrew Huberman and stuff, but he talks about things which are going to be for like a smaller percentage of people, right? It's like, gazing into the sun in the morning and stuff, right? Well, obviously circadian rhythm is really important, getting outside and stuff, but if you're not taking care of those three big rocks, and the good thing is it's kind of a ripple effect, right? When you exercise more and you exert more and you get out and you get more daylight, you actually tend to sleep a bit better, right? And then when you sleep better,
Exactly.
you tend to make better decisions with food, right? And then when you cook your own
Exactly.
food, you know what's in it, right? You're not getting all the garbage that you get when you get takeaways and eating out and stuff, right? So,
Exactly. And the other thing is sunshine. I forgot to say that as a pathologist, there's no relationship between sunshine and melanoma. All the new research comes out shows that we were wrong about that. It
oh,
doesn't
really?
mean that, yeah, it doesn't
Because
mean
that,
that
that,
you
that
have
was
to,
like, I heard that was the most important thing, getting out,
yeah,
gazing
that's
into
what
the
they
sun
keep
for 10
saying
minutes.
still. They keep saying it still. But if you look into the research, keep saying that there's no relation. If there is any relation, even it's preventive, not actually causing. But it's different from if you get a lot of too much burning, because each time that your skin regenerates, it loses a little bit of collagen, and it can affect, and it can become cancerous and melanoma. But for most people, it's not like that. For most people, they're afraid of getting out or being in the sun, and it's really bad because it's really important. Like eating vitamin D is not equal to getting sunshine. It's different. So you never can replace sun with pills or food.
It's crazy we can even think that, though, right? Because every single thing, the whole world, every living organism revolves around the sun. All the energy we get from the bloody grass-fed cow that we just ate, where does he get? Where does he get? Well, he's eating the grass. Where's the grass getting the energy from? From the sun. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah, yeah, and it's very important through your eyes. It affects your brain, like a lot of other things. Like it's not just about vitamin D. Reducing sunshine to vitamin D is I think is stupid because it does a lot of things on our body. In a sense, a lot of our body is photoreceptors, like they react to photo, they react to sun. And that's why, you know, UV is very important, red, infrared is important, anything. But the best of that is sunshine. So if you can get sun, don't go to infrared. Don't waste your money. Just get it out there. So that's the best thing.
Yeah, 100%. I'm glad you brought that one up. Awesome, Amir. Thanks for your time, man. Really enjoyed that chat. Is there anywhere like the audience can find? Because I know we talk on WhatsApp, right? But is there anywhere the audience can find you online or anything? Or
I made because I just do it as help. You know, as not as the main job, but I do have a Gmail that you can put it if you want. If anyone
awesome.
has a question, it's called Keto Pathologist.
Yep.
At gmail.com.
Great, I've got that one. Yeah, awesome. Keto. Yeah, I've got that for the show notes anyway. So I'll add that in there. So if anyone does need your help and stuff like that, because I know you do.
Actually, I've got, if someone needs help, I've got at least a lot of information about different modalities, modern, traditional, alternative. So if someone's, for example, got a serious disease and they're thinking they've heard something, and the doctors say that, oh, it's bullshit, because most doctors they try to poo-poo everything other than modern medicine, unfortunately. And that's a pity, because if they educate themselves about a lot of other things, they become better doctor. But anyway, so I can answer them. For example, if they've got a question about something and they want, I can at least give them an opinion, and they can think about is logical or not. Because at the end of the day, unfortunately, there's too much conflicting information, and you don't know which one to trust, especially when you are seriously ill. And it's a very bad situation to be. So I think at the end of the day, people are trying to trust themselves and trying to trust their logic. And that's important. So hopefully.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I wanted to touch on that today, but we went down a good rabbit hole there. I think of just going all over the nutrition stuff, which is what I think people gonna get a lot of benefit from. But the whole medical space and what to expect from your doctor, what to look out for, blood markers and stuff like that. We'll have to do another one, right, on that. Sure. But again, I'll leave your contacts in the in the show notes anyway.
No problem. Thanks. It was very lovely talking to you too.
Yeah, you too, man. Really enjoyed that.
Hopefully catch up somehow. Yeah, no worries.
Thanks again, man. Catch up soon.
Okay, see ya.